So I've been a football coach here in the UK for almost 30 years now. Once upon a time, I had a decent shot at playing at a professional level, and I even had trials at Man City when I was a teenager. This is before they had the oil money. I don't think I've gotten a sniff these days. But like so many others, a horrible injury took me out of the picture, and I had to kiss my dreams goodbye. However, that didn't mean that I had to turn my back on football altogether. It's my life, always has been, so I decided to get into a career in coaching instead. A few years later, I'm working for Marine AFC on Merseyside, mainly along a bloke that had to be double my age. He had bags upon bags loads more experience and bags load more contacts, and one day, he comes to me with the offer of a lifetime. An old mate of his had somehow managed to land the head coaching job for the national women's team, Belize. Trouble was, he needed two blokes to help him out. He'd asked his mate, who had in turn asked me. 8 weeks after that, following all kinds of vaccinations and travel forms, we were flying out to Belize City to become the official coaching staff of an actual national team. Granted, they just so happened to have never played a game before, but we saw that as more of a challenge than a hindrance. But the trip turned out to be much more difficult than just coaching a few amateur footballers. In fact, it turned out to be a bloody nightmare for the entire time we were there. First off, and this isn't all that connected to the Belize thing, but our flights out to Belize City happened to be on the 9th of September of 2001. So we spent our second full day in Belize not maxing and relaxing by the pool as we should have been, but glued to the telly in the hotel bar, watching footage of the plane smashing into for hours, and if our flights had been booked 2 days later, we'd have been in the air during one of the most terrible events of our lifetime. So to say that shook us up would be an understatement of the century. Anyways, the main thing happened about 2 or 3 weeks later once we'd gotten into the swing of the coaching job. Me and my colleague from Marine were staying in the fairly scabby hotel in Belize City, but the food and the drink were absolutely phenomenal, and it was all being paid for by Football Federation of Belize. So it wasn't like beggars were about to suddenly become choosers. The only trouble was that it could get a bit wild later on at night. I saw more than one older European-looking bloke going into a room with a much more attractive Belizean girl than leaving maybe half an hour to an hour later. Sleazy, I know, but as long as they didn't put him near us, we weren't fussed. And only a few weeks into staying there, I'm woken up in the middle of the night by a repeated rhythmic banging on the wall near my headboard. Instantly I know what's going on, and it only makes me extra nauseous when I can hear some deep voice in American accent shouting all these pervy things. God help the girl he was with, I remember thinking, because she just stayed quiet as a mouse the whole time, and in the end, I ended up banging on the wall back and shouting, "Keep it down, pal," or something of the sort. He does oblige a bit, not stopping but at least slowing the tempo while keeping his voice down. Still grim, but better than nothing, I suppose. The next morning, I get a knock on the door, and it's the Belize police wanting to ask me a few questions. Of course, I oblige, following the officer into the corridor, and that's when I see all the blood on the door of the room next to me. There are bloody handprints on the door, blood all over the doorknob, and bloody footprints leading away from it. The mad thing is, though, that would have all been cordoned off with tape in Britain, but the cops there just didn't seem to mind us contaminating the scene by standing right next to it. As it turned out, what I'd been listening to wasn't just, that. The bloke had strangled some poor girl before doing that to her body, just feet away from where I'd been trying to sleep. You can bet we moved hotels after that. About a month later, our women's team took on their Guatemalan counterparts in their first ever international football match. We got smashed, 12-0. And 2 days later, after we played El Salvador and the results were much better, we only got beat by 6-0. The president of the FFB sacked us after our post-match team talk. We tried explaining that having the number of goals that we were beaten by was actually quite an achievement for a brand new team. He didn't give a monkey's bare bottom. He just wanted wins, so we were out. We flew back to the UK in time for all the Christmas hype, and I just remember spending it trying to forget about the murder. The whole thing was Definitely one of the most surreal times of my life, and if it wasn't for the actual murder that I tried to sleep through, I'd definitely do it all again tomorrow.